So soaring pay of top bosses signals a crisis in British business and is deeply corrosive to the economy. At least those are the claims of a new report into salaries across public and private sectors. The Independent High Pay Commission found that reward often fails to reflect performance. Executive pay in FTSE 350 companies has more than doubled over the past decade. In that same period, share values in the index climbed just 6%, as you can see there. Now, disasters include Deepwater Horizon. That didn't prevent BP from posting one of the greatest executive pay increases over the past 30 years. Both BP and bailed-out bank Lloyds have raised CEO pay by more than 3,000% over that period. But Barclays actually topped the lot in this respect. It paid former boss John Varley £4.4 million last year. That's almost 5,000% more than his 1980 predecessor and 169 times the pay of the average British worker. Well, Deborah Hargreaves is chairwoman of the High Pay Commission, which was set up by Compass, which is a pressure group that seeks to influence Britain's opposition Labour Party. She joins me in the studio now. And Deborah, you're saying that this level of pay, this disparity, if you like, between the executives and your average British worker is corrosive. What exactly do you mean by that?
Well, what we mean is that it's undermining trust in business. We did some polling around our report and we found that 79% of the people we spoke to said they thought pay and bonuses had got out of control. And levels of trust in British business are very low at the moment. And that really matters if we're looking to business to pull us out of this downturn that we're in. If people don't trust them, then that's not a good place to be.
I suppose the businesses would argue that they do need to attract the best talent out there to boost their profitability, and that's what they need to do to pull us out of this mess, if you like, by that same argument.
Well, that has been used as a justification for high pay a lot in the past, but it's not really borne out by the facts. When you look at this so-called global talent pool, it's a bit of a myth. You don't really see executives crossing borders that often. You don't see chief execs being poached to go and work in America, for example. And so I'm not sure that their justification really holds much water.
Bottom line is, we have a free market economy. Are these companies and businesses not perfectly within their rights to spend their cash however they like?
Well, they are owned by shareholders and they are accountable to shareholders. Shareholders have got very exercised about very high pay awards. They're very concerned about the lack of link between pay and performance. And they really support some of our recommendations, one of which would really simplify these packages. They've become very complex. You can often see 6 or 7 elements of pay within a chief executive's package. They all pay out at different rates and it's very hard to work out exactly what they will pay at. We're saying let's get right back to basics and have a base salary for chief execs, more easily comparable with the rest of their workforce.
OK, but then isn't this report somewhat limited in its scope? Because you're essentially comparing the pay of senior executives with the average British worker. I mean, surely that's not comparing like with like.
Well, what we're looking at is pay compared to the average worker, but also to the average worker within those companies. And what we found is over the past 30 years, we've seen the top really pulling away a lot from the average worker in that company. So, for example, at the banks that you mentioned just now, it was 13 times, the execs were paid 13 times average pay within the bank in 1980. Now that's risen to 75 times. So even within their own companies, that's leading to big disparities in pay.
But isn't that natural within a company that you would have people at different levels, that you would have variance of pay grades?
Some companies do try and iron that out, and we've found that in companies with very large disparities, there's lower levels of employee engagement. So you find high levels of absenteeism, for example, employees not being very motivated, not being behind management goals. And chief executives and boardroom directors would say that this is one of their high targets, is to get employees engaged and motivated. And when those big disparities in pay show up, we're seeing that that has the opposite effect.
But let me ask you again about the scope of this report, because we do live in a globalized world right now, and the workers and the businesses in this country, they're not just competing with other British businesses, are they? They're competing on a global scale. Again, I mean, these guys would argue that they are paying the salaries that are internationally competitive.
Well, that's what they say, yes, but we don't really think that there is much of a global market for talent. And you can can say this is a dysfunction in the labour market, because when prices are very high, you would expect supply to rise to iron out those big prices. But this isn't happening in the market for directors and CEOs, and we think it's operating as a bit of a closed shop. You have a very small group of people sitting on boards across the country. They're all sitting on each other's pay committees, and they're all setting pay within that closed environment.
But then I'm just wondering about measures like the 50p top rate of tax on those earning more than £150,000. I mean, weren't these brought in to address these imbalances? Are you saying that this isn't working?
Yes, they were brought in, and I think that's a very good thing. And now what you're seeing is businesses lobbying to repeal that 50p tax rate. How that can be an argument put forward when at the same time they're saying there should be a freeze and a real terms cut in the minimum wage, and their own pay packages are rising by 50%, I think it's very hard to justify.
Yeah, but the point is that you have this tax in place that is supposed to be raking in revenue for the Treasury, for the top earners. On the other hand, you have groups like yourself talking about salaries being too high. I mean, you can't have it both ways.
Well, I think you can. I think if you've got high salaries, you can have high tax, you can tax them.
But you're talking about bringing salaries down.
We're talking about bringing them down, yes, but we don't expect that to happen very quickly. This is a deep process of cultural change that we want to start here, and we think our report is a first step towards this, but it will take some time.
All right, thank you very much indeed. Good to get your thoughts. Deborah Hargreaves, chairwoman of the High Pay Commission. Thank you.